Lucky you!
Best 36 holes in golf.
You tuned in to Alternate Shots Podcast,
Arnie's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Barkeys, Sandy's,
poker,
Bond, James Bond.
horse racing,
I'm all in.
great movies.
Alfred Hitchcock.
We have no script.
And down the stretch they come.
We're glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Whoop, let's start again. So Billy Regan, today we have none other than Judy Rankin, a special guest, someone who has history with Winged Foot, going back to the 1972 USGA Open, and we're going to be thrilled to hear Judy's stories. She's going to dig them out from the past and the future. Judy, welcome to the Alternate Shots Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you.
You're in the Hall of Fame. You were a Hall of Fame player and a Hall of Fame broadcaster. You know, your name should be Judy Golf.
Well, I can tell you that my grandfather called me Judy the golfer, and it made my grandmother so mad. So,
Father, your mother, your grandmother influential in you getting out on the driving range? How did that happen?
oh, my father, absolutely. He was sort of an everyday 85 shooter at public courses. He really loved Ben Hogan. And one day at the range, he let me hit the ball, and I kind of could. And that was the beginning of my career. So my father really became fascinated with me playing golf. And around when I was 5, 6, and so on, my mother got terminally ill. And so it was my dad and I an awful lot of the time. And he sort of buried himself in my becoming a golfer. And that was, as a lot of people would know at that time, so this would have been 1951, 1952, it wasn't a very reasonable thing for a girl to play golf, or professional golf for that matter. And so his thought was that if I could play golf well, I would meet a nice young man and it would make my life better. So I always say, I don't know if I met a nice young guy, but I met a good man, and my life was better because, for many reasons, because of golf.
At 5, that video shows you on the practice tee with a near perfect setup. I mean, people just don't get that. How do you get that at the age of 5 with the grip perfect and your posture and your stance?
Well, that's the funny part, is my grip was perfect. And then you might know that as not too much time went on, my grip became very imperfect. And I kept that all of my playing years. So, yeah, I started out technically perfect. I really did. The way I was taught was my father and a golf pro, a man named Bob Green, who was the pro at a 9-hole place in St. Louis. They taught me to swing the club by taking it 1 foot back and 1 foot through. When I could do that really well, I could take it a little farther and a little farther and a little farther. So it was probably, I don't know, I think at the end of every sort of session, they let me whack at one. But I think it was probably close to a full year, certainly a full winter, in an indoor basement range for me to swing the club full. And so that's how it started, being more perfect than it ever was again.
Do you remember your first? And I remember my first birdie on a hole you played.
I don't remember my first birdie. I think what I do remember, I think I was 9 when I broke 45 for the first time.
Wow.
And that was a big deal. I was playing in the National Pee Wee tournament and I shot 45. Those were 9-hole events at that time. So I shot 45, which was pretty good when I was 9, because I was really small. And just to keep the record straight, I probably really didn't start swinging a club when I was 5, more like 6.
Yeah. Nowadays, you see children that just learn how to walk swinging a club, and they swing it and they go right down the driving range because the club's heavier than they are.
I think some of the little kids, though, are so sound when they're 3 years old. And I've had this idea, which somebody in the golfing world, or somebody who loves golf, needs to try my idea, which is, I think you should put 2 or 3 really good golf swings on a loop in a baby's room, and if they get where they like golf at all, or they don't have to like golf, they're just watching this wonderful golf swing, and I want to see if it would have any bearing when they were 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
I asked a Korean gentleman one time, who is both in broadcasting and a teacher. I said, why are the players from Korea so sound and so good? And he said one of the reasons is golf courses are few and they're very, very difficult to get on. So an awful lot of their golf is spent on the range. And as their golf is spent on the range, their golf swing becomes more and more perfect. And so I think we see, so many that are really perfect. The one I think stands out as imperfect, but it sure works, is NB Park.
right.
I mean, she has a swing you probably would not try to copy. But I do know this: the secret to the game is you find something that works and you learn how to repeat it. And B would be the great example. She has what looks like an awkward golf swing, and it also looks like she cannot possibly be generating any speed, but she does.
The ball likes her swing, as Billy Harmon would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the ball likes where the energy is, and the energy is right at the ball.
We talked to people. Somebody said there was a time when Tom Watson went 5 years and did not miss a shot. Freddie Couples claimed he never missed a shot. I don't think NB Park ever missed a shot. I think she didn't win tournaments because she couldn't always make the 10 or 12 footers. And I bet you she's one of the all-time 10 or 12 foot putts makers in the history of the game.
When she started to make putts, she never quit. Because she was at a point in time before she won at Evian, and I can't recall the year, but she was at a point in time when she might have quit playing golf. She was losing the ball to the right real often, and she was not putting well. And her teacher and now husband taught her, worked on her to not lose the ball to the right. And then, I don't know, she had the greatest putting week that year at Evian that she had ever had, and it continued. And then she started winning other major championships, and it was she's got quite the resume for somebody who, if you just at first glance, is not going to be at the top of the charts.
Would it be easier to win with Kathy Whitworth's game or NB Park's game? Because Kathy Whitworth's the most winningest golfer of all time.
She is.
Yeah. And her swing was great. I don't think it was perfect.
Was not perfect. She was an excellent putter. The things that I really remember about Kathy are that, first of all, there wasn't any particular part of her game that just knocked your socks off, when you played with her or watched her, other than she was a way better than average putter. But I always thought of Kathy as simply a player. She knew how to get the ball in the holes. She knew how to shoot scores. And, if you combine that with somebody who's pretty good, you have a great player.
Sort of like Scotty Scheffler. There's no particular thing that stands out about him, but he's always there.
That's right. And it's also, it's also a mindset that I don't think it's ridiculous in this regard, but it's there, which is a certain positive attitude that if something goes wrong, you can recover. So you never get in a really big knot playing the game.
Yeah.
And that even keel in your head is so very important. Excuse my phone. I did not turn it off.
I thought you, on top of having a dog, also had a duck.
So
Who would win? Let's see. Pick a top three player right now. If it's not Rosang, Nelly Korda.
Yep.
Who would win from the same 6,400-yard golf course, Nelly Korda or Bernard Langer?
That's an excellent question, because he's somewhat phenomenal in his own right. Well, I think it would be a great contest. And I actually think that Nelly might actually drive the ball a little longer than Langer. I'm not sure of that. I haven't looked at any stats in a long time on the Champions Tour, but there's no doubt that would be a really good contest. And the only thing I would say is Langer is such a crazy experienced winner. He might win for that reason.
Yeah.
But she might win because she's a young woman who would get hyped up to do that.
It would be so much fun to watch two players navigate a course without overpowering it.
Yes.
It would be a great thing to watch.
Yes. So, all those years ago when I played well, we didn't have those kind of stats and so on, but I am pretty sure when I was playing really well and I was a good driver of the ball, I think I would have averaged somewhere 235 to 240 off the tee. And that is in the bottom of the bottom today on the LPGA Tour. And there are any number, a lot of players who average over 260. And when you're talking about a Nelly, you're talking 280. So in that regard, the women's game is a different game than it ever was before. Mickey Wright probably would have averaged, I played with her, I knew her, we were friends. I'm trying to think, but I really think when Mickey was at the top of her game, she might have averaged 255. Maybe she was stretching at 260. It was magnificent, but it wasn't the length of today. It wasn't.
Well, Joanne Carter and maybe Laura Baugh on the 72 Open hit it to the bunker on 1 East. I think it was about a 250-yard shot to get to there, or 240. I remember Mary Mills would just barely get it into the fairway and have 185 left. 4 days in a row, she hit 5-wood. Now that's tough, right? Nowadays, they would play that hole 360. What would you say? A driver and an 8 or a 9 iron, maybe? Wedge.
They hit a 9 iron 130, 135 yards.
Yeah, so it'd be a driver and a wedge.
The one hole I really remember, isn't 16 a par 5?
Yes.
Okay, so I am really contending, and I've hit 2 good shots at 16. I have a long pitch to the green, and I am thinking I need to make 4 here, and I might get there. And I don't remember hitting a great shot, but I hit a reasonably good shot, and I didn't make the putt. And I think not making 4 there cost me as much as anything. So
well,
that. But that's the hole I really remember. And I also remember having one of the best ball striking weeks ever. And I just did not make putts. I don't think I putted. I didn't make them.
Neil Christie, who caddied for you, said the same thing, that you were hitting it square all day and just not getting the putts in the hole sometimes.
He was a great caddy. He was. And I don't know that I've ever crossed paths with him since, but I still remember his name. And I remember what a almost great week we had.
Well, you can say hello to him because he'll be listening to this next week.
Oh, good.
The men who play the Open and the ladies who play the Open, they don't run across those Tillinghast greens every day of the week. What's the difference in a tour green and say an Open green like that, or even a Pebble Beach that's coming this week?
Well, the USGA would like to make them faster than normal, certainly. I think on the LPGA Tour, the goal is 11 and a half in the stent meter every week, but I know we're bumping past 12 in almost all the major championships, and rightly so, to be much more reasonable for women when Judy Bell was the president of the USGA. But prior to that, it was, and I think a lot of people would say this, it was a test that also had an element of luck. Because if you can go way back and think about men or women's US Opens now, but if you go way back, there was the green, there was a little bit of fringe, and then the rough started being that high. I know this now that I'm older and wiser and don't play well. But at the US Open, in all the years that I played, the way to miss the ball was short. Because if you miss the ball long or right or left, maybe it's because of skill, maybe it's because of golf clubs, but nobody was superior at playing these short shots from this deep stuff, as many are superior now. So clubs and skill have changed at this point. But when I look back, I think, and very often you were hitting a 3-wood at a green, and you hit it pin high but missed the green, that was not good. In fact, you would really hope for a bunker.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of a player a long time ago that was great out of that really long rough. And if there were one, I might tag Joanne Carner, because she had a little more nerve to lay the blade open and, whatever. But basically, you really hope the ball would go in a bunker.
Yeah.
So it's a different game today. It's a different game today, and they really do more invite you to get the ball to hole high and to take the chance of going over the green and so on. And I think that has made that's made golfers so much better than all those years ago. And I'm pretty sure of that, because I started playing in USGA tournaments when I was, I don't know, a young teenager. Actually before then, because I was 11 years old and played in the National Junior Girls when Joanne Carner won. She beat Clifford Ann Creed in a playoff. And I would tell you how good Joanne Carner was. My dad and I had stayed and watched that last match. Obviously, I was out early. Clifford Ann Creed never made a bogey and lost 5-4.
Wow.
So, and I saw that.
Well, you were 14 when you won the Missouri Amateur, I think. Were you 14 years old?
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was to most of us too. Yeah, my dad sent me, and I stayed with a family, and nobody dreamed I would do that well, but there you go.
Did you dream it? Or did you have fear or anxiety about it? Or did you just go out there and play golf?
I really don't know. I always played golf kind of serious. That came from my father. My maiden name is Torlumpke. So I'm a little bit German, and my father was really a little bit German. So everything was, well, and my life was more serious because my mother was in the throes of not living. My mother was dying. She finally passed away when I was 11, but she spent the last 4 years of her life paralyzed down the left side of her body. She had a malignant brain tumor. So those kinds of things make your life more serious. And I think people can understand that. So I was their only child. And so I just remember being serious and kind of going about my business. And I don't know, somehow that happened. And I was becoming good and better. I did not win the Missouri Am the next year, but I do remember being the low qualifier when I was 15. And I shot 69, which was an accomplishment in its own right. So
So you grew up playing golf serious, and the other day, maybe it was last week, somebody said, get who it was. Golf is an easy game until you care.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Well,
You can't be good at golf unless you don't care, and then you get good, but you don't care.
if you don't have moments where you hate it, you can never really love it. I think. I don't know. It's one of the great. I have a quote somewhere. Here was Louise Suggs' quote about golf. Golf is like a love affair. If you don't take it seriously, it's no fun. If you do take it seriously, it breaks your heart. So I think that's if you play golf, if you love it and you play golf competitively at all, or even if you're just competitive at your club, once in a while, you are just going to want to throw your clubs in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's those throw the clubs in the lake moment that kind of give you the gumption to try again.
You
So
know
there's
you're in
Tommy-
trouble when your caddy says you better throw a provisional. We may not find that one.
So Tommy Bolt was notorious for that in the old days. Who was anything like that on the ladies tour? Is there anybody? I don't know.
Yeah, we had an old friend. Her name's Joanne Prentice, and Joanne was a little fiery. She was from Alabama, and we were playing somewhere in the Southeast. I'm not sure where. Might have been Spartanburg, South Carolina, or something like that. And I don't know. I was 19 or 20 years old. Joanna brought her mother to this tournament. And her mother had herself positioned in a little chair up above the 18th green. And Joanne, players that were with her and players who saw this all related this story. Joanne, it was an elevated green. So Joanne was down in this valley and going to play up to the green. And she hit her shot. And she was just so mad. She had a headband on, kind of like I used to wear. She took it and she threw it off of her head. And she threw her club. And this lady sitting next to Joanne's mother said, "Oh my gosh, can you imagine acting like that? Do you know who that is?" And her mom said, "I have no idea."
We're looking at this picture of the serious you with your headband and that beautiful follow through, but then also on the right, you had quite a career in broadcasting, kind of like Ken Venturi. You had a playing career and then a broadcasting career, which was a long, long career. And I never heard anybody say other than, "We love Judy."
The Hall of Fame in two different fields, which is unbelievable.
Well, I did. I dearly loved my years in television, and it was a shock to me that it came to be, because I played at the end of my playing career. I played really poorly. I had been hurt for a long time with back problems. It had become very chronic, probably 10 years or so. Some of my best years I played with serious back problems, but I left playing very poorly. As a golfer, as a professional golfer, you blame it on everything in the world but your health. The clubs are wrong. I'm not swinging the club well. I'm not this, I'm not that. But the fact is, the root of it all is your body's not the same. And you're always compensating somehow or another. So I left the tour at age 39. Maybe I had turned 40. I think I was 39. And I'd always loved golf on TV, but I had become kind of withdrawn after playing so poorly, and I couldn't stand up in front of two people and talk. I just could not. And so when I was really glad to go home and to not win or lose every day. And I tell you, in competitive golf, I think players have a little better attitude, but in my era, my time, I felt like I won or lost almost every day. I feel like, and I say this often, but I think playing competitive golf, professional golf, is a little bit like taking an test every day, and they put your score in the paper, you know? So, um,
Shoot
so
me now.
yeah, I was really down. And I got a call from ABC Sports because Bob Rosberg they were looking for a person for the Women's Open to be on the ground like Rossi was. And Rossi and I, my family, my husband, all of us, we were friends for a long time. And Rossi knew what kind of shape I was in. And he told them that they should try me, that my back was really bad and I wouldn't be playing. So I got the call. And before I sort of evaluated my inability to talk, I said yes. And I went to Salem, Massachusetts, and Rossi gave me about a 3-minute tutorial, and I worked for the first time. And I've often said that the blessing was I could lean against a tree and talk about players and things I knew, and I didn't ever have to look in a camera. So I count that very gentle start in TV as the reason I made it, because I was not comfortable with myself, and I had lost sort of any confidence I'd ever had just been beaten up over 3 years or so. And as it turned out, I did few tournaments. I did a couple of tournaments that year. I did the mixed team, and I had a procedure done on my back, which I'm sure some people knew of, where they would go in and they used papaya enzyme to dissolve the parts of the disc that were causing the problems. I got a lot worse with that. I know people who had success. I got worse. So in '85, thank you, I got asked to come to the Men's Open. And I did that. I worked the Men's Open, then I worked the Women's Open, and then I went and had back surgery. And I'm one of those lucky people who the back surgery really, really helped me. And I didn't have the heart or the will or anything to play again. And I'd also had that little taste of television. So in '88, ABC Sports signed a big PGA Tour contract, 20 some events. And Rossi said, they have to hire people. And if you want the job, you got to tell them. And so I did. And, for all the years they were patient with me, I now had a full-time job, and I'm right on 40 years later in television, and I'm so grateful. When I started, you only spoke when you were spoken to. There were people in trucks who opened and closed you. So I worked through all the years where all that changed, where you were controlling your own mic. A lot of things changed. And I really think it was people at ABC. And Mark Loomis was a newbie right out of Vanderbilt when he first started working for ABC, and he went all the way up the ranks. And knowing him as you do and knowing him as I do, he's pretty quick with the learning curve. But things like having your own space was kind of created at ABC Sports, where and one of the goals was to not use our names frequently, once in a great while, but not frequently, because the show was supposed to be about the golf and the players and the golf course. It wasn't supposed to be about us. And they made that, clear so often. And so all the things that you see in TV now were things that were in progress when I was working and learning. So I got to learn them along the way as they were instituted and so on. But today's people who start with, for instance, with on-course work, they just jump right into the fire. It's much harder to start today, and yet they are finding people who grasp it really quickly, like a Smiley. So I think that's great. And My claim to fame actually is I took Dottie Pepper to work TV for the first time. And, you know, now she's kind of the boss of the fairways. So,
In many
that,
ways.
yeah. So I just thought she was having neck problems at the time, and took her to the U.S. Amateur in Asheville, and she worked on course. And it is a little bit of a funny story, but this girl who was quite an excellent player, her name was Dorothy Dellison, and Dorothy was a little emotional. And so Dorothy wins the U.S. Amateur. And the whole time Dottie is trying to interview her, she is sobbing. I mean, like these kind of sobs, you know. And Dottie got through that her very first week working. So anyway, she's so excellent at what she does, and I'm really happy that I had the idea that she had the stuff to do that, because there's no doubt she does, and nobody outworks her as far as homework goes. I can tell you that.
Live interviews are tough. Frank Gifford told me he interviewed Lauren Bacall, and she was the worst interview he ever had in his life. She was horrible. You know, can you imagine someone like that being a horrible interview? But she was.
I got better at it, and I'll tell you why. When I was first interviewing guys, when we'd finish a round of golf, which I knew what to ask them, I'd been there all day. I knew what mattered and what didn't. So I'd ask a question, and then my producer would start talking in my ear about what he wanted, and I never could hear the guy's answer.
And that IFB bugging you.
Yeah. So I finally went to Jack Whitaker, because he was so brilliant at things. And I said, Jack, how do I interview better? And I told him what was happening in my ear and this and that. And he said, well, you have your first question ready, and your second question should always play off of something they said. And I said, well, it'd be nice if I knew what they said, you know. So we finally got that straight, and I got where I could do this pretty well. And I got comfortable with, you know, people like Tiger, and, you know, people like Annika Sorenstam when she shoots 59, and, you know, things like that. So that is all thanks to Jack Whitaker, who was one of the most wonderful voices ever in television. Somebody asked me once, they said, who writes those essays for him? And I said, no one. He's sitting back in the corner and making that up as he goes along, and they're beautiful. If you remember at Pebble Beach years ago, we were doing the US Open at Pebble, and Jack did one of his essays, and he went on and on and on about the bravest man in the world. And he said, but actually the bravest man in the world was the man who first tried an oyster. Anyway, but he just had a brilliant way about him, and loved the man. Really, really nice person. You know, I know Tiger. We have a great inside the ropes friendship. And Lord knows I've interviewed him many, many times. One of the best weeks of my life was I was with him almost the whole week at St. Andrews in 2000 when he won. It's hard for me to really grasp how competitive he must be, and how much he loves golf and competition, because it's hard. It's hard to imagine when someone's had every success that he's had, and they have all the resources in the world, what possesses them to try to work that hard again. And so I guess what I would say, if I were asking him a question, and knowing that I really care about him just because he was so good to me in my job, and the fact that we had a golf relationship and a television relationship did a lot for my career. Let me tell you, that's for sure. So I guess what I would ask him is, the love affair you are having with your children and watching them grow up, and being right by their side, and Charlie in golf, is it enough to to blot out the fact that you're not going to really play competitively anymore? Is it enough? And I think most parents would say it is. And I'm kind of thinking these days, today's Tiger would say it is. But it still is going to be, it's so hard for him because, as he says, I can still play. I just can't walk. Tiger's given an awful lot. I know Tiger's less than perfect, but he's given an awful lot of people a lot of thrills and joys with golf. And I think he deserves to, have a little, have something that really satisfies him and feeds him. For a number of years when I was teenager and then turning 20 and whatever, I worked in the winters. We had a good time off, probably 5 months. And I worked for Bob Tosky at Ocean Reef in North Key Largo, Florida. And one night, day, whatever, I called my father and I said, "Guess, you know who I've been playing golf with the last days?" And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Ted Williams." And I thought my father would drop the phone. He almost couldn't talk. So Ted Williams had come to Ocean Reef. He had a home in Marathon, Florida. And he had come to Ocean Reef to kind of see if he could play golf. And, left-handed golfer, such a big man with big arms and all this and that. But we played golf a lot for a couple of winters. And if he played, he had a friend that, a man named Doc Doherty, and he was always with him. So, and another friend of mine who played the tour for a good little bit of time, a gal named Leslie Holbert. The four of us would play golf. And if Ted played well on the front nine, we'd play 18. And if he didn't, he would buy lunch and we'd be done. And that's how that worked. And it was fun. And I look back and think, my gosh, what an experience I had,
Ted Williams, one of the best hitters in baseball history, was, I think, still the last person to hit 400. And on the last day of the season, he was batting 401. And his manager said, "Do you want to sit out this doubleheader and keep the 401 average?" And he said, "No way." And he went 6 for 8 in the doubleheader and brought his average up to 406.
Wow.
Now, that's an incredible sportsman right there.
I think all the people in all kinds of sports that, are unusually talented. I mean, the extraordinary people, they all have a really strong will. And I think, when I was playing well, more than being confident, I had a really strong will. And probably a person like Annika, and she could put all that strong will and she could direct it at one thing, because that's how she's kind of lived her life, is, one thing at a time and doing it as well as you could possibly do it.
Whose will is stronger, Jack Nicklaus in their prime or Tiger Woods, or is it a dog tie?
Probably a tie, but if I had to say strong will, I would say Tiger, just because Tiger developed it with very difficult circumstances growing up and all. Well, Gary Player is refuted to be a really great bunker player for sure.
Lee Trevino said he'd hit bunker shots and he wouldn't have dinner until he made 3 in a row. Gary Player said, so sometimes he didn't eat.
Well, how about Seve hitting bunker shots with a 4-iron?
Right.
Hitting lofted, soft bunker shots with a 4-iron. That's a talent for sure. Anyway, everybody we mentioned, they're all such extraordinary golfers, and we're all lucky to have. If you admire great players, we're all lucky to have lived in this time. When I was playing golf at this 9-hole course in St. Louis, if I hit a shot that my dad didn't like, or missed the green or whatever, he'd make me go get the ball, bring it back, and do it again.
You had to go get it and bring it back.
Yes, because he was carrying my clubs. So I guess that could speak to why I might not have been the world's greatest wedge player, because my father should have said, go get it in the hole. But he did make me a really good tee to green player. No doubt about that. I was a very good bunker player, and that I think I want to say a little bit like Paul Azinger, a little bit like Fred Couples. There used to be a thought that people with a strong grip couldn't be good out of a bunker, but it's wrong, because people with a strong grip can be good out of the bunkers. The difference is, I don't think we as much try to take the club out and in as we break early, but I mean, those are two examples of very strong grip players who were really good bunker players. And I was too. So if I were to say the two things I really did well, I was a very good driver, a little bit long, and bunkers.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I think my husband, of all the people who didn't know much about golf, but he got to know me, so he was of a very competitive nature. He was a football and baseball player, and he made me tougher. And I think toughening up is part of scoring. I just don't think it's not always going to be the pretty shot or the shot you want it, and you just can't get down about it because you hit a bad shot. You've got to get your head right and go get it up and down. I remember one day I told him, I said, it is so cold, I'm going to quit. And he said, you are not going to quit. Nobody else is quitting. That's the first time I ever won.
Yeah.
That was on the LPGA tour.
Yes.
The Corpus Christi Civitan Open.
Yes. Faro Country Club. Yes.
So how does a guy who's not very good at golf get a name Yippee?
But like me.
Grandfather was a cowboy.
Okay.
And he wanted him to have a cowboy name, and it's had some relationship to the way he cried.
I have two quick questions, and then we'll see where we go from here. Rose Zhang. Does Rose Zhang go the route of maybe surpassing Annika Sorenstam? She's so early in her career, but first tournament, first win, right off the NCAA win. Or does she go in the direction of Michelle Wie?
I would definitely say she would be more like Annika. She would be, Michelle has always had an arm of her life going on that was, well, I guess it was about golf, but it was about more than golf. Because Michelle, for those who don't know, is a magnificent artist, all kinds of things. But I think, Lord forgive me, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think Rose Zhang has come out of Stanford with a very broad, usable education. And I see it in the way she speaks and the way she conducts herself and all that. And I think Michelle, I'm sure she learned a lot at Stanford, don't get me wrong, but I think I didn't see where Michelle was a whole lot different from her time at Stanford. Michelle was still Michelle to me. She was still the teenager that I first knew. And the other thing about Michelle is she probably had to find other ways to spend her time, make herself happy, whatever that is, because she had so many crazy injuries, just like injury prone. Annika was never, ever hurt until way, way late in her career, where she had a little neck issue, but she was never hurt ever. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Being painful. So sorry, I have a third question. I'll squeeze it in right here. So David Foster is the CEO of Colgate Palmolive, and Dinah Shore, obviously. Who did more for golf, or did they both do a lot for women's golf and golf in general?
Well, they both did, but David Foster was sponsoring Dinah's show. And without David Foster, we would not have known Dinah. We would not have had, so many of us had friendships with Dinah and all those things. So in regard to how they affected the LPGA, they were a combo that they went together in a big way. And don't know what David's the one who took us around the world the first time. David took us to England to play at Sunningdale. David took us to the Philippines. David took us to Australia. So he opened so many doors for the LPGA. And then the respect that the entertainment world and the world in general had for Dinah Shore gained us a bunch of respect. And so what a time. It made so much difference for us. So much difference for us.
Is there a sponsor today that might be someone like a David Foster for LPGA golf?
Well, I think KPMG, what they have done, and also CME, those two sponsors have made a huge difference for the LPGA Tour. And I think in most cases, there always seems to be somebody who comes along and sees something in the LPGA that needs to be explored, exploited, whatever. And I think those two sponsors stand out. But just imagine the women are playing the US Open tomorrow morning at Pebble Beach. And I'm going to tell you, in my lifetime, that is one of the more historic things I'm ever going to see, just like when I saw Lorena Ochoa win at St. Andrews. I mean, here's what I think. I think they've arrived.
Yeah,
I do think
I
they
hope
have arrived.
so. I'd love to see them get on these courses. They're playing Baltusrol. I'd love to see them at Winged Foot in an Open again.
Well, I think you might see that.
Looking back at your career in broadcasting, the number one call, Gary Koch's got his at the Players Championship. What's your number one call?
Oh, I have several. In men's golf, of course, as I told you, I was with Tiger in 2000 at St. Andrews, which was amazing that ABC would have trusted me with that. I was also at St. Andrews when Jack Nicklaus played his last round, which I found people didn't just respect Jack Nicklaus, which I knew, but they really loved him. It was a standing ovation all day long.
He birdied the 18th hole too, I think.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So those things are extremely memorable to me. I also was in the fairway with David Duval when he shot 59. That was kind of a big deal. I was on the call in the booth with Annika when she shot 59. And I've had some really great experiences. I really have, and I could go on, but I had a tremendous great run.
Well, we hope you keep running. This has been awesome, Billy, and I are just thrilled, privileged, and honored that you would spend a little time with us. You're such an instrumental part of the game of golf. We like to talk about Winged Foot as the greatest 36 holes in golf. That's our opinion. You have history there, short of a couple of breaks either way. That putt on 16, you would have won the opener. You could have been needling Susie Maxwell birding, and she tells me she's so sorry every time she sees you that she took that one away from you.
Thanks to both of you. I enjoyed it. And now I got to get back to real life and quit thinking about the past. Here was Louise Suggs' quote about golf. Golf is like a love affair. If you don't take it seriously, it's no fun. If you do take it seriously, it breaks your heart.
Why are you laughing?
That's what happened. Somebody changed my grip, and the next thing you know, I can't do the podcast anymore. I felt like I was in the first row of the first pew at church right during the sermon.
And your brother was poking you.
My brother was making me laugh.